so hello everybody. Hope you can hear us. I just turned my speaker up, but I'm here. Well, welcome to we're going to do is a weekly session. Now, it could be a training session. We have a series I decided to start called Ask a Recruiter. And we have my friend Kekeli here. And Kekeli specializes in IT recruitment. So this will be very good, especially if there's a lot of IT people who I guess might have periodic employment, and also quite a few who might have been trained and have had trouble getting work, particularly if they've come from overseas as well. So Kekeli's been working in various recruitment areas, and now you're internal, I believe, with a large company, Domain. Previous to that, you were a recruitment company, and you've done a few other things as well. So before we start, I'm going to mention there's a chat box down the bottom. If you go to your screen, there's a chat box. We have a bunch of people join already. Feel free to go into the chat box. Also, what we have is a Q&A box. So what you can do is ask questions specifically there. And at some point, we will go to the questions, and anything specific you ask, we can go and Kekeli can see that, and we can go directly to that. So feel free to chat and ask questions at any time. We may not get to it straight away, but I'll have it in front of my screen so we can talk about it more. So Kekeli, welcome. I think you used to come to my seminars. You come to a few of my seminars, haven't you?
I have. Yeah.
And let us know if you have trouble hearing any of us. I've got a little bit of a studio set up, so it might be a bit easier. But if you have any questions about setup or can't hear us, just let us know. So Kelly, tell us about yourself. I mean, I know a little bit about background, but our audience doesn't. They're going to have a bunch of questions for you. Tell us about, I guess, what you do. Anything interesting you'd like to point out about IT recruitment? So yeah, just let us know how are things, I guess, also with coronavirus, any situations we should know about, and yeah, just give us a general spiel.
Okay, well, hi everybody. I'm Kekeli. I am a tech recruiter at Domain, the property tech real estate company. Before that, I was predominantly on agency side doing recruitment across, analytics, machine learning, general software development, everything product, tech, and data. Before that, I have a background in pre-sales engineering. So I've been at Domain for around 2 months now. It's very different on this side, not being on agency, but I would say at the moment, COVID has affected a lot of people, and I see the main thing is that there are a lot of highly skilled people available on the market and available immediately. So standing out is a really big issue at the moment.
Mm. Yes, and before that, you were working with a recruitment agency, and you only just recently moved to Domain, didn't you?
Yeah, that's correct. I actually moved remotely, so I haven't even gone into the office yet myself.
So you've just been working from home all the time, and you've been doing interviews at home as well,
yes.
Online. Okay, so let's start with some of these broader questions that I get asked a lot. So you see a lot of resumes, and now some of your work has been niche on certain IT jobs, and I imagine some are a lot broader. But in resumes, people have this big complaint. They send a bunch of stuff, they never hear back.
Yes.
What grabs your attention as an IT recruiter about a resume? Whatever the role is, there's a job description, obviously. What grabs your attention that makes you want to say, okay, I want to talk to this guy?
Fair enough. I would say the first and the biggest thing, in all honesty, is readability. It doesn't matter how much good information is in your resume. If it's hard to scan, if it's hard to get to that key information, it really doesn't matter. As a recruiter, especially at this time, we don't have too much time to go through and read a whole resume. So really, we need to find the information that we need very quickly and very efficiently. And if your resume is easy to scan, it's easy to read, it's laid out very well, you don't have massive blocks of text, that makes it a lot easier to get the information we need. I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is obviously having relevant information. You don't need all your roles, you don't need massive detail on all of them. You don't need to put every single technology you've worked with. You need to put what's relevant to the role and what you're proud of, what is relevant to you. Another thing I really like in resume is, facts, basically results. I was in here, this is what I delivered, this is how much I saved the company, this is how long it took me. Being very fact-based and showing your achievements is those three things really help.
Okay, so you've pointed out readability. What sort of example? Is it just a lot of long sentences, or is it more a format that you think about? Because that's the key thing they pointed out. What is that to you?
In all honesty, it really depends on the type of role and what kind of information you're trying to get out. But I would say too many dot points is an issue. Just listing a whole lot of acronyms, a whole lot of technologies, if you're using bold too much, a lot of people tend to bold out every piece of technology they work. If you're using bold on everything, then nothing is bold. Bold is meant to point to particular things that are meant to stand out. So if you're bolding everything, it really defeats the purpose. Segmenting, so there's a lot of resume formats you can find out there. Me myself, I use Canva for my resumes.
Okay.
Really good formats that will split your personal details off on the left side and has really good formats for all your achievements and responsibilities on the right. And really just picking and choosing what is relevant. So if you have 20 years experience, we don't need 8-10 pages. You really need to pick and choose what's most relevant for the role. And that is the main thing. And also paragraphs shouldn't be too long. It should be very scannable. It should be easy to find what I need to find.
Right. And I think especially in IT, one of the traps that people fall into is this idea of keyword stuffing. They stuff a bunch of keywords in there. Like, how does that affect you? I mean, they do it because of APS, applicant tracking software, I believe often. They want to make sure that the software that you require and all this stuff gets enough points to get through. What is your comment on that? I mean, obviously you're telling me, and my understanding and research I've done is keyword stuffing doesn't work. It detracts from your resume, right? Does it actually help with APS?
Look, in all honesty, we don't use APS, and I never have. I think a lot of like the top tech companies use them, but they will still screen them manually. In all honesty, even if it gets you through that stage, once a hiring manager looks at it, they're probably not that interested. Once you see all those keywords, it really is, can this person really be as experienced as they make it out on all these technologies? And normally the answer is no. So what I would say is, if you want to keyword stuff, if you need those keywords in there, remove the ones that aren't relevant to the role. I would leave the most up-to-date technologies and the ones that are actually mentioned in the job description. All the other stuff, I wouldn't put in there at all.
Okay. All right. So, and it's more readability. Now, a lot of people actually, like most companies, do most companies use APS though? Or is it just some?
I really can't speak on that. I would say not the companies that I've worked with, but I can't.
Okay. All right. Understood. Canva, you mentioned Canva though. Like, is it something you find that like those specialized formatting, making things pretty sort of software is actually a thing? Because obviously people worry about, like I'm guessing, and maybe it depends on the APS system. Some APS systems I'm told don't like those special formatting things. They like a plain text thing.
Some of them, yes, but I think most of them are advanced enough these days that they can read from a PDF, they can pull the relevant data out, and it's not that big of a factor. I think the hard thing is that you're trying to, if you're focusing on an APS also, once it gets to the hiring manager, it really doesn't stand out.
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. And I talk about this all the time is, in the end, somebody's got to read your resume. And if it's not readable, it doesn't matter if the computer liked it.
Exactly.
Someone's actually got to read it.
So if it were me, I would be preparing for when someone reads it, not just getting through the first stage that 100 other applicants have also got through, because you're still not any better off,
Yeah. And tell me, like, just like a general IT role, and I know you've done some specialized stuff as well as broader stuff like you'd be doing. How many applications do you actually see for some of these roles?
Well, I recently did a QA role, so a testing role, and you often get a lot of applicants for those. I had, I think, 120 within a day and a half, and I had to take the role down. Just because obviously being one person, I can't give all those resumes justice. I can't read through them all. And eventually you just end up picking the ones, the top few, and you take those forward, and others unfortunately end up getting ignored. So
right. And I guess I'm just trying to do something quickly here. Someone's asked, my assistant's asked to promote to panelist so she can do some admin work. The only problem is she appears on the screen now. So I'm just trying to work it out so she don't appear. Ksenia, I have to take you off panelist, sorry, because you're appearing on the recording.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh, no, I don't want to remove you, but I can't work this out now. Change role to attendee. Okay, done. Okay, so all right, so look, that's resume. Now again, if you have any specific questions, please pop it in there. I know we talked about LinkedIn as well. You do a lot of your stuff through LinkedIn.
yes.
And here's my experience of it. It depends on who's doing it. I find myself when I meet with senior managers, a lot of those guys haven't updated their LinkedIn for years, partly because they're not looking for a job, and partly because you might say they're a bit more old school. They're not using LinkedIn for their networking activities. What is your sort of, how do you use LinkedIn, and what can people learn about getting themselves noticed on LinkedIn?
I guess I'll start with how we use it. First of all, any application that comes through, if I read a resume, say I read it and it looks a bit hard to read, hard to scan, I will go straight to their LinkedIn. I will not really call anyone without checking their LinkedIn first, because I want to see, I have their resume, but I want to see their public face. I want to see how they present themselves to the world. I want to see what their views may be. I want to see the type of things they post. It's just like how people talk about companies checking social media. I don't check anyone's social media, but I'm very interested in their LinkedIn.
Right.
If it matches their resume, if their skills are listed there, I just want to see in general the way they present themselves. I think that shows a lot more personality than just a resume. And personality is a massive thing these days. Most of the people that I speak to get rejected because of culture fit. It's not often because of their skills. So I feel LinkedIn is a much better way to get to know the person before I even call them. And I might have some interesting things to ask them about their LinkedIn. Oh, I saw you commented on this post. I saw you made this article, tell me more about that. So
is that something that's common though? Is that something that's more unique to you? Do you find other recruiters go and look at their posts and what they comment on?
Those things, they show up pretty easily on LinkedIn. So whilst it might not always be posts, yeah. Basically all the recruiters I know are looking at LinkedIn posts. They're not posts, but they're looking at a LinkedIn profile because it's your public face after all.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because if people do a search on your name, usually the first thing, unless you have a personal website, is your LinkedIn profile pops up. And I think also for a tip for people, you can actually change your URL for your LinkedIn too. So you can make it your name. If you have an uncommon name, then it's easy. You have a common name. Believe it or not, there's quite a few Dick Lambs in the world. So I couldn't get LinkedIn / Dick Lamb. I had to put a number on it. But sorry.
I would say one more thing is most recruiters, if not all recruiters, use LinkedIn Recruiter. So one of their main sources of finding candidates will be LinkedIn Recruiter, which is automatically putting people's titles, the places they've worked. So keeping LinkedIn up to date, putting when you're open to opportunities and all those things, making sure your skills are up to date is super, super important, because the only way LinkedIn can find your skills is if you've actually manually put it in your LinkedIn profile. So if I'm searching for some type of developer, I will put in that skill. Whoever doesn't come up, I just will never see.
Okay. So the skill search is sort of important. Is that sort of thing where people like, what's that thing that people just sort of say you're good at this on LinkedIn? I can't remember what it's called now. It was a big thing when it came out. Everyone just started clicking things to say, oh, do you commend this guy who can do financial modeling or stuff? Is that what you mean by the skills, or is it more the job description or their description of what they do?
No, it's actually, there's a little section at the bottom of everyone's LinkedIn profile called skills. So you can put communication, you can put SQL, you can put...
And I know people can say, oh, click on it and you get a plus and you get a score. Yeah. Okay. All right.
There's also separate endorsements, but I would say the skills is a really big part.
Okay.
LinkedIn is actually not good at pulling keywords very well. So once you put those skills in, that's what will come up when I do a search for someone with those skills.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Endorsements, is that a big thing? Do you look at that? Or do you think it's a bit fake?
Look, it can't hurt, but I don't look at it. I don't look at it too much, and I don't think many people do. I think maybe if you're going for, it never hurts, but if you're going for an exec role or something, those types of things matter. But for your general IT role, your general any role, it's probably not that big of a deal. That's what we have references for.
Right.
But as I said, it can't hurt.
Okay, interesting. All right. So let's move on. Let's just tell us. So you've got a bunch of people out there who, let's say, might be struggling. You came to that seminar back in, I think, January, which I did at Suncorp, where we had basically a pretty full room. A lot of those guys were in IT. A lot of them had not been working for a while, actually. And some might be on this call now. What advice do you give to the guy who's struggling, who's really like, he doesn't know exactly why they can't get through? Is it more their resume, you think, or is it more when they turn up to meet? Because you have to meet people in the current situation, probably online, but you generally have to meet people, get them to sign something, agree before you can put them on. If you're a recruiter, obviously, because you get the commission. But do you tend to reject people when they come and meet you and you find that they're not really gonna be great at presenting themselves? Is that often where you find that you have to stop it?
It's difficult. It really depends on how in demand your skills are, which is one thing.
Okay.
So if you're in a very niche field, people are willing to lower the bar a bit on how well you present yourself. But I would say, look, in general, there's kind of two phases. So if you are applying to lots of roles and you're getting no calls back, then obviously the problem is your resume or your LinkedIn profile. It's just not standing out. If you are getting those interviews and you're just not getting any callbacks, then you need to look at what am I actually doing once I get through that stage? Because a lot of people struggle to even get there. So if you are there, then you have the right skill. You've shown you have the capability, at least in your profile. So what you need to do is work on how you're actually presenting yourself, how you're talking through problems, how you're communicating. And one simple thing I find is people come up to me on LinkedIn, they won't even address you by my name. It'll say, "Hi, I'm looking for a job." And that is just not the way to do it. I have dozens of people every day who do that. How are you standing out? I think that's something a lot of people, in some ways they feel like they're doing me a service by coming to me and asking for a job, when really
I get that too. I get people who try to meet with me for coffee and they don't even pay for my coffee. So it's almost like, God, where did you learn your social skills? If you would say sort of like there's a big factor for why someone, like, is there a main factor or a mainly top 2 or 3 reasons why some of these guys just won't get the job? So even if they get the interview, what are people being rejected on generally?
As I said before, the main thing is culture fit. I would also say lack of preparation. You need to understand, first of all, the company you're interviewing with. You need to know the person's name. I always put, when I send someone for an interview, they have the person's LinkedIn, any tidbits I can say about them. You might have worked for the same company in the past. Anything you can do to make it a warmer introduction is very, very welcome. Too many people go in there very, very cold, with no information on the company, no information on the role. They don't ask me any questions. They just go in there and think they're going to say, I have 10 years of experience in this, and that's it. When really most hiring managers, most companies, most of the types of companies that I work with don't really care about any of those things. I think the first thing is just being a person to that other person, make good conversation, be polite, firm handshake, eye contact, present well. A lot of it is those very, very basic things.
Okay. And if I let's say, to get to an interview, do you find that you don't find they get rejected on skills because the skills is on the resume? So most people who apply, who did get through that stage, you find generally can do the job technically.
Yes. In fact, I think most people who get interviews can do the job.
Yeah.
It comes down to the way you present yourself.
And that's what I find. A lot of people, like, if you look at a bunch of resumes, half of those guys could do the job.
Exactly.
And you can probably teach them the stuff they don't know. They don't have to match every single dot point on the job description.
Yeah.
Some of those are nice to haves. They're not necessary, but it's when you get there, it's like, what sort of impression can this guy work with you? Can this guy put you in a meeting when they're not there, and you can just sort of run it or represent them? Can you work with these other guys? Are you going to cause trouble? All that sort of stuff. So there's a question: is how do you overcome that cultural fit barrier? Someone's actually just asked right now. How do you overcome that cultural fit barrier?
Look, in all honesty, it really depends. I would say sometimes you shouldn't try to overcome it.
Right.
If you go into a company and you're being yourself and they just don't think it fits with them, you're probably going to go in there not going to be very happy in the first place. That would be the first thing I say. Second of all, it would just be researching the company, understanding a lot of companies have values these days. So I know Amazon has a 10 values, and someone has to match those before they get a job. If you're interviewing for a company like that, you need to research those things. I would look on Glassdoor and look for interview tips. In general, I'm looking for what type of person works here. What do they all have in common? As I said, research the person you're interviewing with. And when I've been interviewing, the first 10 minutes, I'm just trying to talk to the person. I'm trying to get to know them. I'm trying to get a few laughs. I'm just trying to be a person, just like you'd meet anyone at the street, like on the street, or go for coffee with. You really just need to come across like the type of person they could see themselves working with. That's the biggest thing, because every person you interview with, they might have to sit next to you. They're gonna have to interact with you, and if you're not pleasant to interact with, then they don't want to work with you. It's just that simple.
Okay. So hopefully that answers that question. Some of the, if you have any more specific to that, just be a bit more specific with us. I'm going to ask you maybe what could be enlightening would be maybe some stories about people you've placed. I don't know if there's anything unique about maybe a certain guy who struggled and they finally got there, what got them over the line, or maybe something about what employers saw which made this person stand out. Maybe it's employer specific, or anything that pops out at you as just a good story to tell the people and learn from. Anything like that.
Yeah, sure. Look, I couldn't speak on too many specifics, in all honesty, but what I would say is something that stood out as a trend to me is being really humble. There are a lot of people out there who are really good at their job and they want everyone to know it. And I think you need to showcase it, but in a way that's not so bullish. So going into an interview very humble, that I don't know this and I haven't experienced it, but I'm really eager to learn and I want to learn. This is what I've done. This is what I've overcome in the past, as in I went into this job, I didn't know this, but I learned this and this is how I did it. These are the problems I faced. A lot of people don't want to go into interview and talk about the times they've failed or the things they haven't done well, but those are things that go over very, very, very well with basically every hiring manager I've spoken to.
Right, interesting.
And you can talk about a time when you didn't do well and how you overcame it and what you learned from it. That shows that you can bring that same attitude into whatever company you're working with, compared to the type of person who goes in and says, oh, I've worked with this, or I haven't, but I can learn it, it's fine. But you don't give any real evidence or any anecdotes that say, this is how you've done it, or this is how you would do it.
Because if you don't tell the story, it's sort of not believable, is it? I find if you don't tell the story, it's not believable. Sorry, there's some vibration happening on my ground. Just on that though, and here's the thing, what I found is I try to coach people on telling a story, because believability is like, well, where did you start? What did you do? What was the result? And some people say that's the what was that method that they could
method, or
sort of, it's like situation, action. It's one of those techniques, and I don't like putting it under that name, because it's almost like you want to tell the journey about how you got to something. A lot of people stick on their resume things like, oh, I'm a results focused, blah, 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 right? And to me, that's just fluff. I don't know if that's true or not. How do you read that, by the way? Or situation, STAR, that's right. Situation, task, action, result. I really hate sort of teaching people that, because what ends up happening is they give a very basic answer and I don't really get much from it. So it's almost like telling the journey, how you got there. And I think that's a cultural fit too. Don't you think? I think some cultures, they like to sort of make sure they keep their status and their pride and don't look bad. Whereas I guess our culture here is a little bit more humble like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's a big factor when first impressions are very hard to overcome. So you just need to make that first good impression, and that's a really good way to do it. In general, I think it's a lack of practice as well. Not people really practice with anyone regarding interviews. If a good way to do it is go through a job description and they say we're looking for this type of person, and think about times when you showed those values and write it down in that star format, or talk it through with a partner or a friend or something like that. But if you just try to wing it the first time you go into an interview, unless you're a really talented person, it's probably not going to work out so well.
Right. Yes. So thank you, Richie, for adding, telling us about the star. I forgot the initials. On interviews, I guess what I've actually coached people on as well is that it actually, as you said, there's practice. But when I teach something new to people in interviews that make them stand out, how to tell a certain story to answer a certain type of question, I tell them they're going to stuff it up unless they get that practice. It's almost like it's not until the third time that you really get there. Do you find a lot of people tend to, I know my experience is, do you find that there are top candidates and then there's crappy candidates, and then the crappy ones stay crappy? Crappy is probably a hard word, all right? I'm being my own personality. Let's say people who struggle. And then there's guys who get offered everything and they get pick and choose. What is the difference there? Is it just the personality, or is it a lot more about results that they delivered, or how they phrase things? What is it about those people?
I would definitely say it's a personality. I think some people are just more personable people in general, and they're better at selling themselves. So that ability to tell a story, that ability to talk through the problems they faced, it helps them a lot. And there are people who I don't think it's often so many crappy candidates. Crappy candidates don't get so many interviews. If you're getting an interview, as I said, you fit the bill already. They want to hire someone like you. You just need to make it easier for them, and a lot of people don't.
Yeah,
So
I feel sad sometimes. I feel like I talk my way into something, and there's someone probably much better than me who missed out because I literally could just sell myself better.
yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, so don't go and study another course unless you absolutely need it, because the extra qualification, does that matter much on the resume?
It depends on the type of company. I think
Right.
if you're going for a contract role and things like that, I think it matters a lot more because they want you to be up to speed in 1-2 weeks, and
Okay.
you have that capability already. It might be one interview and you're in, and then you're going to do it for 6 months and that's it. I think if you're going for a permanent role in a company that really values their culture and really values long-term thinking, it doesn't matter so much. Some of the best developers I know are self-taught or went to TAFE, have no other certifications. It gets to a certain point in your career, it really doesn't matter anymore. I think a lot of service-based companies value those, but let's say product-based tech companies in Sydney and in Australia in general, those aren't what they're looking for.
So contracting, you're saying certain sort of type of software qualifications more, or just like maybe agile or something like that?
I think it does depend on the type of role. So I'm speaking mostly about, let's say, engineers. If you're a project manager, there are some sort of certifications that are really, really valuable, or a BA. If you're working for a large enterprise, it just gives them a bit of, I guess, insurance that say, well, this person should know how to do this. If they can't, it's not on us. But let's say for a Google, an Amazon, any cool tech company that people are really lusting to work for, they're not fussed about those things. What I would say is a lot more valuable, at least in IT and engineering in general, is things like work on your own side projects. So saying, I took the initiative to do this on my own. This is what I built. This is the problem I had. This is how I solved it. Those things are a lot more valuable, but it really does depend on the role. And I think most people would know what kind of courses are essential for their roles and what ones aren't.
Right. So you're saying side projects, and I sometimes point this out, especially when there's a cultural difference. Maybe they're international student graduate, or maybe they just come from overseas. They tend to focus on a little bit too much on qualifications and titles and such. And what you're saying, the cultural fit is really important because technically most people can do the job.
Yeah.
You look at the LinkedIn for that. Do you identify in their resume as well some of this side stuff?
Definitely. So the resume I'm looking at for, I guess, a lot more context. I'm looking for a lot more detail on the resume, and also your written communication. This is exactly how you sell yourself. LinkedIn, I'm looking a lot more on presentation. What they're interested in, and just as I said, the way they present themselves. I think if you have a strong LinkedIn profile, you're doing a lot better than most people. And if someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn with a very incomplete profile, I'm probably not paying too much attention, because it shows that you're not putting much effort into how you present yourself to the world and to future employers. I mean, if someone turned up to your interview, to be a project manager or so, and they turned up in shorts and a t-shirt, it would be the same as having a very incomplete or not up to date profile.
Okay. Okay, it's interesting. Is that what you find it with other recruiters that you work with as well, that they very much focus on that?
In general, as I would say, there is a difference between contracting and, let's say, a lot more permanent roles, which is what I work. But you really need to know the type of person you're hiring for a permanent role. When you expect them to be around for 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 years, you need to know who that person is, compared to a contract role where we need to know, can they do the job for 6 months? And so it's a very different playing field. So I think people struggle a lot less in the contracting world.
Okay. So Richie is asking this question: how do you stand out in a video interview for a graduate digital transformation role? So this is quite specific. It's a graduate role, digital transformation role. How do you stand out in that area?
That is a very specific question.
Yes. But I guess if you make it broad, it's video interview, and also digital transformation, or maybe a graduate. Let's say graduate.
I think for a graduate, the biggest thing you need to show is attitude. You need to show you have the appetite to learn. You need to show that you've taken initiative to do some things yourself. I would be researching the heck out of the company and whoever I'm interviewing with.
Right.
I'm gonna read the news on what they've been doing recently. Maybe they've got a new acquisition. Maybe they're doing this. Whatever it is, you need to know about it. And I would be trying to weave those into the conversation very casually, however I could.
Right. So in interview, obviously, I mean, here's what I found sometimes. Sometimes, okay, you research. I find you can over-research a company, because sometimes what they say on the website is not really what that manager is thinking. He's not necessarily checking the website himself. So you can overread things, think that these are the values that everyone lives by there, and my experience, sometimes those values, they don't even know what they are.
That may be true. But in terms of being, as I said, it's really the attitude, is the be on time, dress sharp, be very clear in your communication, say exactly what you want out of the role. Too many people go into a role and say, I want a job in this field. And that's it. You need to sell the fact that you want to work for this company because of these. And that helps a lot, because a lot of people want people who want to work for their company rather than a company. So I think as a grad, it's eagerness, it's attitude, it's showing initiative, and however you can do those things is the way you have to do them, in all honesty.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep asking for questions. We're sort of a bit over halfway through. Is there any sort of specific tip that you want to talk about? What you can give advice to IT people who've been out of work for a while, maybe people just looking to change. Anything else you can give a tip on, a thought on, story on, anything like that?
I would say for someone who's looking for work, this may be a bit counterproductive, but the best thing to do is to be building a network before you're out of work. Network is the biggest thing. Going to meetups, obviously, where I met you and how I've ended up here. I met my current boss at a meetup.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is building the network is the biggest thing. It's the be all and end all. And so many people I know get jobs based off referrals, and they haven't applied for roles in years. So I really think that building a network, going to meetups, and also LinkedIn helps with that. Liking posts on LinkedIn, commenting on posts counts as shares. People see your profile and they see your skills. You end up showing up higher on the ranking for doing those things.
Okay.
So obviously building your connections on LinkedIn. I really don't think there's anything more valuable than having a network, especially because as I said, the biggest thing is that people don't know you as a person. They don't know whether you're a culture fit. So when they know you directly, when they know you through a friend, you've already passed that barrier. Now it's just, can you do the job?
Right. Okay. Good point. A lot of these guys will be asking in their mind, maybe they won't say it directly, but I need a personality transplant for that. that's a blunt way of putting it. So if I'm a shy guy who's not a great networker, do I still go to these things? And what would it get me if I'm just sort of quiet and I'm not going to meet people? People are going to think I'm not the right person. How does that person get ahead?
To be honest, that person is me. I was so shy the first time I went to a meetup, and I really didn't talk to anyone. But there is no easy way to do it. There's no magic bullet that you're just gonna suddenly flip this switch and these things are gonna become easy. I don't think many people who have sold themselves into these jobs or who do these, who host these things, I don't think they're necessarily extroverted people. They've just had to do what it takes, and I really think in general that is what you have to do. If you really want that, we don't all want to go to work every day, but I mean, I went to work today, and I'm sure a lot of other people went to work today, and that's just what we have to do.
I wanted to play golf today. But no, that's a good point, because believe it or not, I probably was an introverted person before.
Yeah.
And I did a few things to help me. But I don't think anyone's introverted actually wants to be introverted.
Yeah, no, that's true.
They actually want to be extroverted. And they can imagine in their mind how they would be, but there's a gap between reality and what they think. So you just got to bridge that gap by starting to do it. Public speaking is one of those things I teach people. It's not till the third time you get up there, then you feel comfortable. But you could have done that third time in a week. Like get up on stage in a week. So within a week, you would have been not afraid. So you just have to do it a few times and see how it goes. I got a few questions. I'm not sure if you can see it. Now there's a chat box. So I'm going to ask people typing in the chat box to type in the Q&A box. There's a separate box on the bottom. So I'll answer the Q&A first. I ask the Q&A first. So Marina says, how to address a speculative application best? The company is a perfect match. The jobs offered are from the right field, but not the right seniority level. I'm not sure exactly what that means. So basically you're saying you like the company, the jobs are a bit out there, and they are, I'm guessing, too high for you, and not the right seniority level. Was it too low? So you like the company, but it's a long ball, basically saying, I want to send a resume out and hopefully they'll consider me, even though my resume doesn't exactly match what I do. So I think she just added too low. So engineer instead of a project manager. So basically applying for a job with a company that you like, the role might be too low that they've got, but you want to work for them. So you want to send something out there that consider you maybe for a higher position, I'm guessing.
Okay. First of all, I think something in the executive summary of your resume would help. So saying, this is what I am now, but this is what I'm aiming to be. This is what I'm really passionate about. That needs to be first and foremost in your resume, because I get a lot of applications for, let's say, as you said, an engineer, but this person's a project manager. And I'm thinking, did they read the job description? If they had that in their summary, first of all, I wouldn't be asking that question. The next thing would kind of go back to network and putting yourself out there. I'm going to try and find who is handling this role, who's the hiring manager, who's the recruiter, and I'm going to try to reach out to them directly. It is a long shot. It always will be a long shot. But what you need to do is get yourself in front of someone, because if you believe that you can do that role, then you just need to showcase that to them. And LinkedIn or email is probably the best way to do that. If you see they're holding an event, turn up to that event. I've done that myself. I've gone, I'm not sure if I meant to say this, but I've gone to a meetup at Canva to ask the head of recruitment at Canva for a job. Obviously, I didn't get that job, but I built that network, and now I'm on those terms with it. And you really, if you want to get somewhere you've never been, you kind of need to do something you haven't done before. which is, put yourself out there and try to speak to these people any way you can. Email, LinkedIn, all those things will help.
And I want to tell a couple of stories here. One is a friend of mine who basically got their new profession basically by turning up to meetups. And I forgot the other one now, but I'll tell that story first. But basically, I had a friend who didn't have a degree. He had a business. Let's say it was a decent business. It wasn't a small time business. It was a decent business. He got out of the business, sold the business, and thought, oh, I wouldn't mind going into the corporate world. No degree though. So he started turning up to agile meetups. Didn't understand the lingo. Just sort of sat there and asked certain questions. And when it got too difficult, maybe he just went back and researched and came back next time. Studied what they could, started their own meetup. And this is what, I mean, I've done this not to get a job, but I started my own meetup. And this is a little bit of a result of what I'm doing now, is a little bit of a result of that. But basically they started their own meetup and they became an authority because they're an authority on agile now.
Yeah.
And that they kind of started working in that field, got their friends, end up working in that field, working for banks here, and then ended up working in London for the last quite a bit, getting paid God knows how much. But basically that was doing the stuff that you didn't do before. Because you doesn't have a degree, you're going to spend a lot of time getting a degree, then you have to study that stuff, or you can make yourself an authority and stand out and be known to people in different ways. And I think that was the other point that that someone raised as well, that you raised, that you go and do some of the stuff you don't want to do, turn up to meetups, go meet people, you never know where it's going to end up.
Exactly.
Cool. I forgot what exactly the other thing, but there's a couple other questions here. How often does age become a factor in culture fit?
I can't speak from experience, really. It may help on the initial perception, but I think, and I'm sorry to tie everything back to network and reaching out to people, but it is one of those things. If you give people, if all they can see is these things that they can judge you on for face value, that's what they'll judge you on. As I said, those aren't things that we do or the companies I've worked with do, but I think it always goes back to just trying to reach out to people, get in front of them and show them what you're actually about. Because it's very easy to discount someone at face value, but if they're talking to you and understand what you're about, it completely changes that.
And you can look at me, I don't look like I'm 20 something, but yeah. Well, I don't look like I'm, well, I look like I'm 20 something. I think that's, so another question is, someone's asking about, Pat here is asking about, what do you think makes a good IT recruiter?
Hi, Pat. That's a good question.
We know Pat, don't we?
I can summarize it as communication, resilience, and network. Once again, I think, well, communication helps to build all those things, resilience as well. But knowing someone who knows their stuff and knows the right people, and someone who's going to have you in, like, who's going to be in your corner and fight for you. I think that's the advantage of working with let's say an external recruiter, is that rather than you just applying and you fighting your fight, you have them in your corner pushing for you to get an interview, pushing for you to get an offer, arguing your case in maybe a way that you couldn't quite articulate as well. And I think someone who can do all those things is a pretty good IT recruiter.
Right. Okay. Why resilience? Is it because it's you get rejected by employers?
Yeah, I mean, we get rejected by both sides. Candidates sometimes just stop answering your calls. They have
really? The candidates stop answering?
Yeah, they just stop answering. They don't turn up for interviews.
Really? Okay.
Last minute. You have obviously employers who turn you down all the time, who might go behind your back and try to hire someone that you presented. You're dealing.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that was prevalent.
Anytime you deal with people, you have to be resilient, I think.
Okay, that's a good point. I mean, when I used to have a restaurant, you basically interview 10, you hire 5, 3 would turn up, and 1 would last a week. So you definitely need resilience for that. Okay, so Rima has this question: how do you get how do you get your CV noticed if you're new to the industry?
That is a tough one. I would say an executive summary is a very powerful thing. It is really the only chance you get to say, at least on a resume, exactly what you're about, where you've come from, and what you're looking for.
This executive summary is the top part of that resume, right? The first bit. Yeah.
And you need to make it very punchy. You need to make it impactful. You need to say what your motivations are, what you're passionate about, and why you want to break into this new industry. Highlight your transferable skills. So everyone has transferable skills. You need to say why you coming from this background makes you a better candidate than maybe someone from a conventional background. Those are the things that I'm trying to do. In addition to the general things of reaching out to people directly, a strong profile, all those things. And in general, resumes make them easy to read, scannable. But really, you need to highlight why you're making this change and why that makes you a better candidate than someone who's more conventional.
Basically, yeah, you want it to sell you. It's a brochure for you, right? So mid-level resume, 3 pages?
It really depends on how much you're trying to say. My resume it depends on what you call mid-level. My resume is 1.5, 1 3/4 pages, and I'll probably stretch it out a bit, to be honest. So if you're a mid-level, I can't see much more reason for more than 2 pages. But I'm not a believer in like a set number of pages. You should go through, put all the information you need, then cut it back to what's necessary, and then add whatever you think is really, really interesting. And
that's a good point, because I think there's all these ideas that people have, especially if they've come from the US side, a 1-page resume. I don't think you can find out enough about the person in 1 page, especially if you're going to put executive summary or a career summary in there. You're going to tell a bit of a story, and then, sorry.
And you definitely need to have one of those in there.
Yes, and that is a key. A lot of people don't put enough of that in there, or they write one or they try to attach a cover letter to say that. And what about cover letters? You don't really get to read them. You don't read them. Recruiters don't read them. Let's be blunt.
To be honest, I don't see many come through, and I think every now and then, if someone looks borderline, like they look like they're worth a chat, but I'm not quite sure, I'll read the cover letter. If they're not close, if they just don't look like they fit the bill, then, in honesty, I've seen your resume. This is the way you present yourself. Most recruiters, I don't think, are going to read at that point. But it is a nice little tidbit that can push you over the top if you are on the cusp.
Yeah. Sometimes employers ask for them, and that's directly in the company where HR are doing the touchy-feely stuff rather than a recruiter itself. Okay, so Richard is asking, what are the best questions a strong candidate can ask before, I think that means the end of the interview rather than in an interview. So what are the best questions a strong candidate can ask?
I would be asking what makes someone actually successful in this role. What would I be expected to do in the first 30, 60, 90 days? Don't ask how you did or if you got the job. I probably wouldn't do that. And I might ask some people, this is a mixed one. Some people don't like it, some people do, but I would ask, is there anything I need to clarify? Anything I wasn't completely clear on? I just want to make sure that I leave with the best impression possible. But I think in general, it's asking, and you should be asking questions throughout the interview. It should be a back and forth. It shouldn't just be one person talking at you. But in general, it's asking what is expected of me. How can I be successful here?
And I actually, I have a whole module on killer questions, and this is one I've asked once, and I think it sealed me the job. I basically said, I sort of sensed the interview went well, but then there was like us, we're about to say goodbye, and then I just sensed something like still the person was thinking something. So I just said bluntly, or not bluntly in terms of rudely, but straight up, it says, is there anything that makes you doubt that I'm be the right person for this role? Because I wanted to handle that down. Because what I aim for is at the end of that, what happens to me half the time is by the time I get downstairs, if it's in the city, by the time I get into the car, the agent has called me back because the employer's called the agent. The agent's asking how I went and then telling me they offered me the job.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure I seal the deal, because people being people, we forget. Oh, that guy was good. I can't remember exactly what he said there. I had some notes somewhere. I met this guy, he's better. I better hire this guy.
Yeah.
Right. And also a good candidate. You don't want to miss out on a good candidate, don't you? Because they're going to get another offer somewhere. If they're looking now, they'll have a few interviews. The good candidate will get a bunch of offers. I want this guy. Let's see if we can get him now. And I might have interviews tomorrow, but I want to get this guy. So let's just get this guy. So I think being brave enough and seeing yourself as that quality candidate without being a show off, being humble about it, being willing to step out and say, okay, is there any reason to reject me, but in a humble way? I think that's one way of doing it. So here's another one. Dan is asking, how does my CV get noticed among 300 other applicants? And how do I get an interview if 300 applicants apply for a position? So basically what we started with is, how do I get noticed? How do I get to an interview if hundreds of people, literally 100, and you said, a day and a half, you got 100 and something applications, you had to stop the ad because you couldn't do it justice. I think a lot of recruiters don't even stop it. They just don't read it.
Yeah.
Right. I remember there was a sort of junior accountant role that I worked with a company. One of the finance managers there hired a junior or graduate accountant. Overnight, there were 200 and something applications. So how does one stand out there?
Well, look, assuming the company has a decent recruiter who's at least going to answer people back, I would say before I apply, I'm trying to figure out who's posting the role. I don't think many people have much hope if you apply and there's 300 other applicants. I think it's just luck of the draw. You just end up applying at the time when they happen to be looking, or you happen to apply first and you're first on the list. Apart from that, you need to find out who's hiring for that role, and you need to say, look, I want to apply, but I want to learn more about the role, or this is a bit about me. I love the company. I've seen you do this. I've seen you do that. I noticed this is the product you're working on. That's where research comes into, and you need to really stand out in that way. I don't think applying is a very good way, and most recruiters, I don't think, really apply for roles anyway. I would never apply for a role before trying to figure out who's posting the role and reaching out to them directly.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I think there's different experiences as well, but what I do is, yes, there's an ad. What I've done in the past is, and sometimes they list who it is, and they do list a phone number. Even if they don't list the phone number, you can still get in contact if there's a name particularly. Or sometimes there's an ID for the ad, right? If it's a recruitment company, they'll have an ID. I send the resume, wait 5 minutes for it to get to the system, so it gets stored in their database, pick up the phone and call them. And I have my sales pitch ready about why I'm interested. Now, most of the time, the recruiter's not always sitting at their desk going to answer the phone call straight away. So you might leave a message. You don't want to leave too many because it sounds like you're hassling it. But sometimes, I would say 25% of the time, the recruiter's at their desk and they'll pick up the phone. And I have my sales pitch ready, and they'll often say, okay, can you just send me that resume again? I'm just looking for a system. Just here's my personal email. Flick it, have it ready, send it to them straight away. I have a spreadsheet where I take notes about what we discussed. So next time, because I got a terrible memory, right? And I forget people's names, etc. So I have a spreadsheet, and I say, when did I call them? What did I call them about? What's their phone number? What's their email? What was the job? And basically, I get the inside running because they're looking at my resume, and I'm talking to them. And then usually I'll come in. They'll come in. Are you free today or free whatever? I just say yes and work it out, and then turn up. Make myself sound like I'm in demand. I've applied for a few things, but I'm really interested in this one. So I'll turn up and then make a good impression. Usually it works, because I get along very well with recruiters. I think I could have been one in a different life, but that's what I have done. Okay, so I just we're out of time. So that's additional skills in IT or otherwise that are beneficial to have or highlight. So just have a look. There's 3 questions in the Q&A there. You can see that, Kekeli. Pick one that you want to answer first. Just make sure we get through it.
I think the first one, what additional skills in IT or otherwise are beneficial. I think the most recent, latest technology, I think AWS, Azure, whatever it may be, I think you need to have those skills. And if you don't, you're probably lagging behind at the moment.
What skill was that? AWS?
Just working on cloud technologies. That's
Oh,
something
wow.
everyone needs right now. In general, really strong communication. That is something every person in IT really, really needs, because you need to communicate what you're doing to the rest of the business. So I think that's a good thing to highlight in your resume, how you have worked with the business, not just, the IT team.
Okay.
Um, how should I prepare for a Zoom interview? I would definitely be sitting in a Zoom interview.
Mhm.
You want to be comfortable. If you're not comfortable, if you're standing the whole time, you're not gonna be at your best.
Mhm.
Um, I think it depends on you said for IT project manager position, a tie is not necessary. I don't think. I think the tie these days. I wore a tie to my first recruitment interview. I was told it was outdated.
I think IT is a little different, right? Because I always wear a tie
Yeah.
and I'm expected to, but I've worked not in so much in IT, but I interview in different areas. I mean, my answer to the Zoom thing, there were a couple of years ago or a few years ago, I did have two, it was Skype, not Zoom at the time. I don't know if Zoom was around yet. But I interviewed the HR manager and the managing director, and they were both in different cities. So I couldn't meet them. And I got the job without even going to the office and meeting anyone in person. Um, so, but I wore a tie. And here's another tip. I look at the camera when I'm talking.
Yeah.
The temptation is I look at the picture and I try to set the camera up. I've got this special camera, which is above the thing. So I'm trying to look at it. But if you're looking at the laptop, you're doing this. I'm talking, but I'm not looking at you. I'm
Yeah.
looking down, right? Look at the camera. That's how you get that personal contact, eye contact, by looking at the camera while you're talking.
Yeah.
And it's distracting. You have to get used to it. And I'm used to it because I'm talking with audiences, and audiences sometimes, if you've got lights in your eyes, you can't see the audience. If they're shining lights on stage, you can't see. You just got to imagine that they're there. You've got to sense their sound. Just point out people that you can't see, like you got to pretend basically.
Yeah.
So that's my tip on that. But obviously preparation and also getting a little bit of body language. Some people have too little of them if they're sitting down like this. I try to move back enough so I could show enough of my body.
Yeah.
And lighting as well. I've got 6 lights around me here.
But look, I would say just look at the company. How do they dress, and dress a little bit better than that. But in general, I don't think anyone's gonna penalize you for not wearing a tie. So just be as comfortable but still as presentable as you can in general.
Mm-hmm. And I
Richard?
think that next one, I mean, you probably haven't answered that. But what I do find, if you're a recruiter, you prefer Word. No? Yes?
Look, for me, I am not fussed. I just want it to be as easy to read as possible. I'm sure there are ATS systems that prefer Word, so I'd probably just have both. But in all honesty, it doesn't affect me or any of the ATSs that I've used.
No, I don't think it's the ATS question. I think it's more, you have to take their contact details out when you forward it on, don't you?
We
As a
do.
recruiter company.
Yes.
And it's harder to do with PDF. You can do it. You have to have, you have to buy the special license software, but then you have to fiddle with it. And I know that most recruiters ask for Word specifically for that reason.
There are some that do. A lot of us use formatting software and formatting people who will just strip that for us. So a lot of us aren't actually doing that ourselves.
Yes.
But I'm just gonna say, if you're good, if your resume presents well, no one cares what format it's in.
Yeah.
Just make sure. That's the biggest thing.
I know the ATS. I met a career coach, and we've got 2 minutes left. I met a career coach who was very focused on ATS once upon a time.
Yeah.
But the way I like to say it is this: ATS is a little bit like, think about Google. Google is trying to find the most relevant search. It's trying to find what's most humanly logical in your search. ATS is trying to duplicate it. So they keep improving it and keep changing it. It's trying to duplicate a human being reading your resume and finding relevance in it. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but I wouldn't go overboard. If you know if it's you're going to go into a personal email, it won't go through the ATS probably for that reason. If you're applying systematically for a company, like a recruitment agency, one of those large ones like Hayes, is likely to go through an ATS. I wouldn't use the column format for that. I have sent resume to somebody where I had fancy boxes and stuff. And when I sat in front of the recruitment agent, that whole thing disappeared on their printout.
Oh yeah, that would be because we're reformatting it in our way. But I think it goes back to if you're making it for the ATS or you're making it for the person. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the person's making a call. So whatever format allows you to make it as readable and as good looking as possible, that's the format I'd use. I think that's a very secondary thing, and it's probably not going to stop you getting a job, you know, in most places.
Absolutely. So I think we are just about out of time. Anything final you want to say? I mean, I'm just going to talk about next week. What we'll do is that we'll have a different series where maybe I'll get a few people who've actually in jobs, how they succeeded to progress up the line. I'll get probably a little bit of variety, maybe a panel of two, see how time goes. And this next series, it might be on Wednesday going forward, given that people are coming out of lockdown. Kekeli, would you like to say anything final before we finish? And any other further questions, we can extend a couple of minutes if we need to.
I don't have too much to say. I would just say in general, I think the main theme is try to speak person to person as much as possible. You are dealing with people after all. The people are going to make the final decision. You need to reach out and try to build those relationships. As Dick said, if you can get someone on the phone, that's great. Sometimes you can't. The next best thing is reaching out on LinkedIn, through an email, through a referral. You need to, in general, you need to use your people skills, and you need to try to rely on people when you can. I think that's the most effective way. It's how I've got all my jobs. It's how a lot of people who are really good have got their jobs. It's through word of mouth, referrals, network. Apart from that, it's making your resume really scannable, really easy to read, and just making sure you actually write for the role. Don't just apply for every role that you see. Take a bit more time and tailor your resume and your application to the role that you really want. So you might apply to half as many roles, but you're getting a lot more success, a lot more callbacks, because you took the time to tailor your resume and tailor your application.
Okay. I think definitely true. And I find, yes, picking up the phone is very important. And the other thing, oh, by the way, I've just created a YouTube channel as well. Xenia, if you can hear me, maybe just post a Facebook group, LinkedIn group. I created a LinkedIn group, a Facebook group called Career, Job Search, and Professional Development, and also a LinkedIn channel. So I'm going to post a bunch of videos up there. I might even post this chat that we've had up there as well. If no more questions, thank you, everybody.
Yes,
thank you again. And if you go to those groups, we'll post our next event there. On Eventbrite, I'm on professional development and professional entrepreneur presenters, I think. I'll have to check that. But we'll post our next event up soon. And thank you again. And I will see you. And goodbye, Kekeli. Thank you again. And I normally will present you a bottle of wine.
Oh,
It'll
really?
have to be virtual.
I'll take a rain check on that. I'll remember that next time.
Unless you want to go and play golf with me sometime. I've got a bunch of rounds available at Moore Park if you're interested.
Oh, I'll take
it. Thank you, everyone.
See you.
Bye-bye.